Well,
We talked about how democratizing energy what it means for our clients, and um, how empowered they feel to be able to gain access to, maintain their access to energy and utilities in their area, beyond just advocacy, but sort of gaining that sense that they have some stake and some control in that part of their lives.
yeah, awesome. Anything else folks want to share that came up?
I'll unmute myself and kind of speak for the group that I was with. We talked about how, like, what does energy democracy, like, what does it make you think about when you hear that? And so my group, we're all pretty familiar with like Eastern Kentucky. So at some point, like we have some roots or we're serving or from that area. So we talked a little bit about just like coal and how there's so much like land there of just like inactive coal mines now. And basically, families and like generations that have, signed contracts to coal companies, and they don't necessarily know what they have even signed and how now, the coal mine like basically owns the minerals on that land. So that was something that we kind of talked about, and just how we also talked about what like an electric bill averages for the clients that our members are serving, and how that could range anywhere from like $150 to almost $400. And so those were some of the things that we touched on.
Cool. Yeah, thank you for sharing. Anybody else want to share?
Just to iterate to what Kaylin said, we just talked about energy being accessible to the clients, being more accessible to the clients. And then we also talked about geothermal, if that was like a part of it.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, I think you covered a lot of it. When I think about democracy, I think about participation and being able to participate in the process and determining, where your energy comes from and how much your energy costs. And so I like this definition that comes from the Climate Justice Alliance, which is a national network of organizations that work in communities that are directly impacted by energy extraction and climate change. And they say that energy democracy is a shift from the corporate centralized fossil fuel economy to one that's governed by communities, designed on the principle of no harm to the environment, supports local economies, and contributes to the health and well-being for all peoples. And so we'll talk a little bit about the utility system and how it's set up in Kentucky. But it's, as you all know, you don't really have options when it comes to where you get your electricity from. And the same is true for water. And so, we have this very centralized system, and it often feels like you don't have any control over, where you get your energy or how much your bills are. So we'll talk a little bit about the regulatory system as well, and ways that people can be involved in that process. So, like we're just talking about, our utility systems, most of them in Kentucky are monopolies, and they're what's called regulated monopolies. And so utilities are granted the exclusive right to provide service in a service area. And in return for that exclusive right, their rates and their capital expenditures, the money that they spend, are regulated. And this regulation is supposed to ensure reliability of service, safety of service, and fair, just, and reasonable rates. In Kentucky, most of our electric utilities are what's called vertically integrated, which means that they own the generation, the transmission, and the distribution of electricity. So they own the whole process, you know, from burning to distributing to, you know, getting it into your home as electricity. And so, you know, talk a little bit about who owns our utilities. There's a couple of different models, and we really have all of the models in our state. So depending on where you are in the state, the ownership model of your electric utility could be different. So I'd love to hear if anyone knows who owns your electric utility where you're at. Just maybe hear from a couple of people.
Is LG&E through the city?
So LG&E is a private company.
We pay our bills to the city of Bardstown.
Yeah, and
This
so
is-
that's a municipally owned utility. So we've got private owned companies, municipal owned companies. Does anyone else have a different utility ownership model?
Also in Nelson County, there's the Salt River Cooperative too, for some people.
Yeah, so some folks have cooperatively owned electric utilities. And there's actually one more model in Kentucky. Anybody in the western, the far western part of the state know who your utility provider is?
I just know Paducah Power.
So Paducah actually is another municipally owned one, but the fourth model is the Tennessee Valley Authority, and that's actually a federally owned utility. And so we have investor-owned utilities like LG&E, Kentucky Utilities, and these are owned by shareholders. And so when they're making decisions, they're making these decisions in favor of making a profit for their shareholders and not necessarily in the best interest of customers. And they're regulated by the Public Service Commission. And so we'll talk more about the PSC next. Then you have municipally owned. So these are owned by the municipality or the city, and they should be making decisions in favor of low cost and reliable service for customers and residents. They're not regulated by the Public Service Commission, and sometimes this lack of oversight can lead to poor decisions around maintenance and upgrades on their systems. And then we have cooperatively owned. So cooperatively owned utilities are owned actually by all of the customers that are called members of the co-op. And so decisions are made in a quasi-democratic way, but they're often run in a similar way to investor-owned utilities. And a lot of folks who have cooperatively owned utilities don't even really realize that they're part of a cooperative or that they have decision-making power in that process. And then we have the Tennessee Valley Authority. Like I said, it's a federally owned utility. So how do utilities make money? Investor-owned utilities make a guaranteed rate of return on electricity and investments. So that means that when they build new infrastructure, they put in new power lines, they put in a new power plant, they can charge us, the customers, to build it. And then they can also make money on top of what it costs to build it through a return on their investment. And then they turn around and they charge us for the electricity produced. So in this model, we actually pay twice. We pay, pay to produce it, and then we pay to purchase it. And this is why you'll see a lot of times utilities are fighting back against rooftop solar. It's not that they're against solar. They're building these utility scale solar farms and charging us to build them. They just don't want us to own our own solar and put it on our roofs. Are there any questions about the utility system, how it works, anything I just shared?
It was very informal and got me very curious as how I can join the PSC.
Yeah. So the Public Service Commission is what we'll talk about next. So who is the Public Service Commission? What is the Public Service Commission? Why should we care about it? So the Public Service Commission regulates the monopoly utilities in Kentucky. And their work impacts our lives in many ways because they decide on utility proposed rates, energy efficiency programs, the treatment of solar customers, among a lot of other decisions they're making. And they're supposed to consider the public interest and ensure safe and reliable service at reasonable prices to customers while providing for the financial stability of utilities. So their role is really to kind of try and balance the needs of the customers and the needs of the utility companies. And the PSC is making really important decisions every day that impact our wallets and our monthly budgets. But a lot of folks don't know about the Public Service Commission, and they don't know that there's actually a regulatory body who is involved in deciding how much they're paying in their electricity and their water rates. Sorry if I seem a little bit sidetracked. My 1-year-old woke up from his nap early, and I'm trying to watch the monitor and see if he's going to go back to sleep or if I'm going to have a baby on my lap for the rest of this presentation. So we'll see what happens. So there's kind of 3 ways that the public participates. So the state has an office in the Attorney General's office. It's the Office of Ratepayer Intervention. And so the Attorney General participates in rate-making processes, and they're supposed to represent ratepayers in that process. But depending on who our Attorney General is and you know, how much resources they have to put towards this, sometimes they're really good at representing customer needs and sometimes they're not. And then there's formal intervention. And so organizations can actually become formal interveners in a rate-making process, and they get to be at the decision-making table with utilities. This is a really great way to get, you know, customer needs heard, and particularly for advocacy organizations to speak on behalf of the clients and the folks that they're serving. But in order to formally intervene, you need to have a lawyer, and you need to hire expert witnesses. And so it can be very costly for that to happen. Some states have programs to help provide funding to advocacy organizations to be a part of that formal intervention, but as of right now, Kentucky does not. And then there's public comment. And so there are public comment periods for every rate case. And sometimes there are public comment hearings where you can actually make oral comments. And so public comments are a really great way to get your voice heard in this process. And, you know, a lot of folks will say, well, I'm not an expert, you know, and the utility rate case, if you read it, is very technical. And so it can feel like, well, what do I have to add to this conversation? But it's really important that the Public Service Commission hears from us about how proposed changes to our utilities will impact our lives or impact the lives of our clients, because they're supposed to make decisions on our behalf, but they can't do that if they don't hear from us.
Hey, Karen, we have a question.
Oh, yeah.
Nicholas asked, how do they fight against privately owned solar?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I'm gonna take my phone and grab my crying baby while I'm answering.
Yeah, you're fine, you're fine.
And so privately owned. Hi, baby, you're okay. It's okay. So in Kentucky, we had a program called net metering, where if you put rooftop solar on your roof and you produced more electricity than you could use, that the utility company would actually give you a credit for that extra electricity that you put back onto the grid. And then, like at nighttime, when you weren't producing solar, you could pull that same amount of electricity off the grid. And so utility companies have actually been advocating to the state legislature and lobbying the state legislature to roll back that net metering policy. And a couple of years ago, they were actually successful in getting that policy rolled back. And so now the Public Service Commission is making a decision based on each utility around like how can private solar users be compensated or credited for the electricity that they produce. Does that answer your question? And I'd be happy to follow up too more about that.
No, yeah, that did. I think that definitely went over what I was thinking about. Yeah,
and all across the country, electric utilities are fighting to stop rooftop solar. It's not just here in Kentucky that that's happening. I'm sorry, y'all.
Hey, it's okay. We understand.
I wanted to just kind of talk a little bit about some of the problems that we see with the Public Service Commission. I'm so sorry. Give me 1 second. Thank you. So what are some of the problems we see with the Public Service Commission? You know, the PSC has an opportunity to be really vision-led and be a watchdog for utility customers, but they don't always take that position. So here are some of the main issues we see with the PSC. The first is that historically they have reacted to utility requests instead of being proactive. And so utilities will request a rate increase, or they'll come to them and ask to build new infrastructure, and then the PSC will respond to that, as opposed to being really vision-oriented. They're massively under-resourced. Right now, the PSC is operating with about 60% of their staff positions filled, and every year the state legislature, when they go through the budget process, sweeps money from their budget. And so they're being asked to do a lot of work with not enough staff capacity. Often the processes and the information are not transparent or accessible. And so I talked about how, a lot of the utility rate case information is very technical. And so it makes it hard for the public to know when and where and how to participate in the process, or to even understand what the decisions that are being made are about. And they often operate with a very limited definition of public interest. And so the Public Service Commission has an opportunity to use a broader definition of public interest, but often they talk just about like least cost in terms of the utilities providing electricity at the least cost to the utility. And they talk about reliability. But we know that public interest includes much more than that, including, health and safety and affordability for customers. But we're actually in a really historic moment when it comes to working with our Public Service Commission. So the commission is a 3-person commission, and they're appointed by the governor. They serve a 4-year term. And we're actually, right now, all 3 of our commissioners have been appointed by Governor Beshear. And, in terms of environmental issues, this is a good thing because we know that Governor Beshear believes in climate change and believes in science. And so we have an opportunity now where we think we might have good commissioners, 3 good commissioners, which means that we could possibly get some changes made at this time. So that kind of brings us to talking a little bit about the campaign that we're working on, which is Energy Democracy Through Public Service Commission Reform. And so our goals for this campaign are that the utility regulatory system really needs to be democratic, it needs to be transparent, and it needs to be equitable. So we want to make sure that people have an opportunity to participate in the process, and that the public voice and concerns have equal say with the utilities. We want to make sure that the process is transparent and that people understand the decisions that are being made, and they understand, what the data is that's driving the decisions that are being made when it comes to planning for our utilities in the future and when it comes to rates that people are paying. And we need it to be equitable. Affordability is a really important point that needs to be a part of the conversation. If people can't afford to pay their electric bills and they can't afford to pay their water bills, then that's a humanitarian crisis, right? Because having access to electricity and clean running water is a human right. And we plan to do this through educating and engaging Kentuckians to put public pressure on the commissioners to make tangible changes to the PSC mission and the regulatory process. It's not enough that our commissioners just make good decisions. We need to see these commissioners, while we have the opportunity, actually make changes to the mission and the processes that they're using to make decisions so that it has a lasting impact outside of just this commission. When the 4-year term is up for these commissioners, we want to make sure that future commissioners are also considering things like affordability, health, and the environment. And here are some of the tactics that we're thinking about using for this campaign. So we'd love to do some visioning sessions and have conversations with Kentuckians about their utilities, about what they'd like to see in terms of regulation and the future. We'd like to engage more people in the public comment hearings and submitting written comments. We'd like to educate the commissioners on models and best practices that exist from other states. There are a lot of ways that we could be doing this differently that they're doing in other states. And then we'd like to host workshops and webinars to engage people in the conversation, including possibly a 12-hour event where each of the networks in our organization takes an hour and talks about how this campaign is relevant to their work. So I'm going to pause here before we have some more discussion. Are there any questions that y'all have about any of this? Okay, I'm not hearing any.
Yeah,
Oh.
I was going to say the same thing. So
Okay. One last tactic. We're talking about doing some like people's hearings, so doing some of our own public comment hearings as well. So, I'd love to spend a little bit of time just kind of talking about, in small groups, finding alignment with your work that you're doing. And so just some questions for discussion is, what are ways that there could be more alignment with your work? What are any ideas that y'all have about messaging that would help reach folks that you serve and help people feel could engage in this process? And what other ideas do y'all have around tactics that could be powerful? So I don't know, Holly, do you all normally stop at 3?
sometimes we go over. We block off a full 2 hours. That doesn't necessarily mean we'll use the full 2 hours, just so like the trainer has enough time. And then also I have some program updates and just reminders to talk to them about afterwards. So we've got some time.
Okay, well then maybe we could do 10 minutes in breakout rooms again, and maybe this time don't stick me in a breakout room because I need to change a diaper.
Yeah. No problem. No problem.
I'm so sorry, y'all. Thank you for being flexible with me.
Yes, no worries. Hold on. Let's get these break.
Thank you.
Somebody asked, can you send these questions in the chat? Let
Oh,
me
yeah.
write. Oh, can you do that, Kara?
I think so. Yeah, I should be able to do that.
Okay. And I will do these breakout rooms.
Perfect. It's okay, buddy girl. All right, welcome, folks. Yeah, I'd love to hear just what you all came up with. If anybody wants to share.
Sure, yeah. In our breakout room, we talked about like the different ways of getting across to people. We mentioned everything from social media to what sometimes is an overlooked aspect of it, which is when it really comes down to it, you can always try your best to meet someone in person. It's easy to get wrapped up in emails and social media and everything and waiting for responses, but sometimes it's worth it to just drive out to somebody and meet them in person.
Yeah, absolutely. Those one-on-one conversations are so important. Carla, it looks like you're talking, but I'm having a hard time hearing you if you're sharing.
I'm sorry. I'm not.
Okay. What else did folks come up with? And feel free to use the chat if you'd rather.
Something we discussed is because especially working with the houseless and renter, like I work with home renters specifically, and it's kind of hard to feel like my biggest concern is like trying to frame this as a way to give back power, right? Like, and in general, home renters don't have a lot of power in Kentucky legally, so it's hard to kind of motivate them to see this as something that's kind of their issue, right? Because like, of course they pay the utility company and like, or maybe it's included in the utility, or maybe it's included in their rent for them rather. So if that's the case, in either case, and in either case, a lot of renters are really living paycheck to paycheck, really able to cover their rent, right? So it's like kind of hard for them to think bigger picture when they're still struggling to just get their basic needs met. So that's something that we were talking about in our group.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, right, it's hard to get people to think about bigger picture when every day is a struggle. What else came up for folks?
Our group did not get all of the questions. So basically, I had mentioned that if we really want to be a part of helping our clients and stuff, it's a good thing for us to invest in shares in the private-owned companies, which are the majority in Kentucky, so that we can have a voice for the community having shares on there. I could be right, I could be wrong.
Yeah, that's a great point, Carla. And they're actually a group of folks, mostly in Louisville, who are doing some shareholder advocacy. They actually bought shares in LG&E so that they can be a part of decision making at the actual investor-owned utility level.
I'm sorry, my service was messing up, so I didn't hear half of what you guys were saying. Just since Kara been on the line, so my apologies.
It's okay. What else came up for folks in their breakouts? Any ideas about how to make this resonate with the folks that you work with or make it more accessible? What about questions? Does anybody have any lingering questions?
Why is the government allowing so many privately owned companies to have the majority of our utility companies?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. And I can send some follow-up resources to Holly to send out to you all. You know, I mean, the idea was that when utility companies and electrification was happening in this country, that it made sense to have one company doing it. And so the government said, we'll have one company doing it, but we'll have these regulatory bodies to make sure that you do it in a way that's fair to customers. And there's a good argument to be made that at this point, that model is no longer necessarily the best model. So I'll send you all a resource. It's called A People's History of Utilities, and it's short, and it explains kind of how we got to where we are in terms of the utility model. Well, I'll put my contact information in the chat. I would love to, hear from you all if you do have ideas about how we can be having this conversation with an audience, a wider audience, and how we might be able to help get folks to submit public comments to the Public Service Commission, because they really do want to hear from us. They want to hear from individuals. They want to hear from nonprofits. They want to hear about how proposed changes to our utilities impact people. And so would love to just have some continued dialogue with you all. And I'm happy to answer questions or hear ideas at any time. So I'll go ahead and put my email address in the chat. And thank you all so much for having this conversation with me and being gracious as my child screamed in the background. So thanks, y'all, and I'll hand it over to you, Holly.
Thank you so much. It's been great, and I'll definitely share your contact information as well through email with our members. I think that the work that you're doing and the work that our members are doing kind of go hand in hand. I think it's great, and I really appreciate you sharing this with us. And I know Whitney's usually the one in on meetings and stuff with you, but again, I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to us. And any resources that you have, I would love to share that with everyone as well. So thanks again. I'm going to share my screen. I will just want to go over just some program reminders and things for everyone. Shouldn't take more than 15 minutes, so hang in there real quick. I always figure out how to share my screen. Okay, can you guys just write in the chat if you can see? Okay, great. Awesome. Okay. First thing, just for our direct service members, any new service reports for new clients that you served in the month of November, please enter them into America Learns today, or you can send me your new service forms through email, and I can attach them to you or to your America Learns account. Same with your volunteer reports. For those of you that have done that, thank you. But yeah, just a reminder, that way we kind of stay up to date on them and we're not having to rush and do so many things towards the end of your service term in July. We just want to capture all of the individuals that you've been serving. Again, it's only on new households that you served in the month. Or if any of your current clients have been housed or have moved into their new home or whatever it is, you can complete the wrap-up form and enter that housing date in the in America Learns for the client identifier that you've already made them. Again, or you can send them to me and I can do it. So those are your two options. Follow up with me if you have any questions. MLK Day, it is January 17th. I know a lot of us are thinking of everyone out in Western Kentucky and everything that happened over the weekend. And so we'll jump into it in just a couple of slides, but there will probably be an opportunity for our members, here with the Homes for All program, and also other Kentucky AmeriCorps programs. We're looking to set up kind of like a statewide AmeriCorps project to help those families and those individuals. We're having meetings together, so I should have some information to you guys like next week on how we can kind of facilitate this in a organized way, but also, you maybe doing something in your county or the community that you're in and still get it to those families in Western Kentucky. So we'll be talking about that. So if I'm sending you emails or if you see an email from Homes for All, please read it. It's very important and it's going to be, impacting those that really need our help right now. But just kind of on the flip side of like MLK Day, it is a day of service. If you choose to be off or if you choose to serve on site, those hours cannot count. We're going to be doing projects across the state, and we're really going to be talking about that next week. So please be on the lookout for emails. Just a reminder too, with the holidays, you do have holiday time. December 23rd and December 24th are days off. And same for December 30th and December 31st. You would mark that on your timesheet as holiday. So if you choose to serve on those days, you're more than welcome to, but just know your site cannot require you to serve on those dates. And if you do serve, your site should give you an alternate day off. Let me know if that's the case, just so I can know what's going on. When I'm reviewing your timesheet, I kind of see, that was the alternate day off. Back to, Western Kentucky and how AmeriCorps members can help in regards to, what's going on. I had a meeting, or other AmeriCorps programs. We had a meeting with our State Service Commission, Serve Kentucky, yesterday. And so what we know right now is, they're in what's called like the response phase. So right now, we're not going to ask members if they feel comfortable to go to Western Kentucky and go out into those areas. Emergency management and Red Cross and FEMA and everyone that's in that area, they have volunteers. They're trained at this point. So you guys are our responsibility. So right now, when there's like debris pickup and things like that, that's very dangerous. And we want to make sure that members are trained and prepared to do things like that. right now, you know, they don't need members, AmeriCorps members there on the ground, but there are things that we can do in our communities to help. Right now, giving blood, if you are able to do so, there are 3 links, and I can send these out to you guys in an email as well. That way you can schedule and give blood if that's something that you're interested in doing. If you choose to give blood, that time is counted towards your service. So it wouldn't be like you have to take off. You can count that whole time towards your service. And like I was just talking about, we are working with, you know, the other 20 AmeriCorps programs across the state. You know, we do have AmeriCorps members from not only our program, and thankfully you guys are safe and your families are safe, and we're so thankful to hear that. But you know, there are other, you know, Kentucky AmeriCorps members in the western part of the state as well. So we're getting our programs together, other directors and everybody. We're trying to figure out a good coordinated way to do like a regional project. We're thinking on you know, our specific program or trying to like leverage and get donations for certain items. So we're not like getting not saying that there doesn't need to be an overabundance, but we have one specific thing that we're going to try to get donated for, you know, these families in Western Kentucky. We have emails and from the family resource centers. So we have good point of contacts and a good idea of those things that they're needed. Just right now, you know, they don't have places to store that. And so we want it to be in a good time that they do, you know, have the space and have the volunteers to sort through these donations. You know, we're still working on how this project is going to look, but there are definitely going to be ways for you guys to help out. I'm thinking about sending a survey out. I just want to say, you know, helping out with tornado relief and everything that happened over the weekend. It's not going to be a requirement. We're going to, you know, we're not going to make you do anything that you're not comfortable doing. So that's why I'm just going to, you know, send out a survey to you guys and kind of get an idea of what everyone is comfortable with. If those situations come available for members to go and help out there. But again, there are going to be ways that we can help out where we're at and then get those items to them when we need to. But also, you know, giving blood, the governor, they have the website on the screen that you can donate money. Again, you don't necessarily have to donate money, but spread the word, get the word out there, because 100% of the money that's donated is going to the families that have been impacted by this. So that's all that I'm really going to talk about. I think it looks like there's a hand raised. I can't see whose hand is raised, but you're more than welcome to unmute yourself.
It's Carla. I
Okay.
had a question in terms
Yeah.
of as we are AmeriCorps and Vistas, could
Mhm.
we not do because I'm thinking that this is gonna go on for a while for our MLK Day project. Why can't we do projects that would raise either funding or like supplies for these people?
Well, that's what we're getting together as like all of the 20 AmeriCorps programs. We're going to get together and figure out kind of like a united project that all members can do for and be a part of on Martin Luther King Jr. Day, or up until Martin Luther King Jr. Day. So that's what we are kind of trying to coordinate. We just want it to be, you know, we do know that this is going to be going on, and I'm not saying that we're not going to continue getting donations or helping out once Martin Luther King Day is like over. This, like you said, this is going to be something that's not going to be turned around in a month. But that's just what our starting point is right now. Again, when it comes to like fundraising and stuff, AmeriCorps members, there are policies behind that. And so we still need guidance from Serve Kentucky on what is appropriate for our members to be doing. So I'm just sharing with you the information that we have at this time. Does anybody else have any questions?
This is kind of a specific question that doesn't need to be answered right now, but if we're talking about doing like any specific projects on the day of MLK, I mean, and this is just speculate or like not confirmed, but a friend of mine told me that they need translators, specifically for Spanish speakers. So I don't know who else is a Spanish speaker, but I mean, I could do that if I needed to.
Oh, that's great.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if that would be useful or not. But just to put that out there in case there's other people that speak another language.
Count me in for Spanish also.
Yes. And Grace.
Oh, yeah, this is Grace. I was just saying that I'd heard the same thing. I got a WhatsApp message from a professor at my local university, and if I don't know how I would track that on MLK Day, but I was already thinking about responding.
No, I am so glad you guys brought that up because translators did get brought up yesterday during our conversation with like Serve Kentucky and other programs. I will definitely reach out to Serve Kentucky. I'm about positive we're meeting next week. But I can reach out to our program officer and let her know, we have 3 fluent, Spanish speaking individuals, and that they are more than welcome to be a translator. So I really appreciate you guys bringing that up. Do you guys feel comfortable with me sharing your email with them?
All for me, yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
definitely.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. I also wanted to say that that I'd be happy to if they're looking for specifically translation or interpreting services, either.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't know
Yeah,
if maybe more needed.
I was going to say the same thing, Grace. So translation is written, interpreting is oral. So just to distinguish. But yes, I could do either or.
Okay. And same for you, Carla?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I will definitely let our program officer know, okay? So do you guys have does anybody else have like any questions about just anything? I can't tell if there's a new hand raised or if it's the old ones, but yes, Grace?
No, I was trying to turn the hand off and it wasn't cooperating with me. I'm
No,
sorry.
you're fine. You're fine. Okay, well, as things come up, we'll be sending out information. I'm going to kind of get, a survey together to send out to members just to see what they're comfortable with in regards to any type of service for Western Kentucky. So I appreciate you guys being on the call and participating, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your evening, and we'll be in touch soon. You guys take care.